All right, guys, so let's continue on. Clarice Lispector. That was when the cockroach began to emerge. First, the heralding quiver of its antennae. Then, behind those dry stands, the reluctant body started to emerge, until nearly all of it reached the opening of the wardrobe door. It was brown, it was hesitant, as if of enormous weight. It was now almost entirely visible. I quickly lowered my eyes. On hiding my eyes, I was hiding from the roach, the cunning idea that occurred to me. My heart was beating almost as in a joy, because I suddenly felt that I had resources. I never before used my resources, and now a whole latent power was throbbing inside of me, and a greatness was overtaking me. The greatness of courage, as if fear itself had finally invested me with courage. Moments before, I had superficially assumed that my only feelings were indignation and disgust, but now I recognized, although I'd never known it before, that what was happening was that I was finally taking on a fear much greater than myself. This great fear deepened everything within me, turned inward into myself as a blind man sounds out his own attentiveness. For the first time, I had wholly fallen back upon an instinct, and I shivered with extreme pleasure as if finally mindful of the grandeur of an instinct that was bad, total and infinitely sweet, as if finally tasting and within myself a grandeur greater than myself. I was drunk for the first time with a hatred clear as a fountain, drunk with a desire, justified or not, to kill. A whole lifetime of awareness. For 15 centuries I hadn't struggled. For 15 centuries I hadn't killed. For 15 centuries I hadn't died. A whole lifetime of tamed awareness was now collecting inside of me and banging like a mute bell whose vibrations I didn't need to hear. I was recognizing them. As if for the first time I was finally on the level of nature. A wholly controlled rapacity had overwhelmed me, and since it was controlled, it was all power. Up till then, I never mastered my own powers, powers I neither understood nor wanted to understand, but the life inside me had hung on to them so that one day, at last, this unknown and happy and unconscious matter would unclasp what was finally I. I, whatever that was. Brazenly stirred by my surrender to what is evil, brazenly stirred, grateful for the first time I was being the unknown person I was, except that not knowing myself would no longer keep me back. The truth had already surpassed me. I lifted my hand as if to swear an oath, and in a single blow slammed the door, and on the half-emerged body of the cockroach. As I did, I had also closed my eyes, and that's how I remained, trembling all over. What had I done? Maybe then I already knew that I didn't mean what I had done to the cockroach, but what had I done to myself? Because during those seconds, eyes shut, I was becoming aware of myself as one becomes aware of a taste. All of me tasted of steel and verdigris. I was all acid, like metal on the tongue, like a crushed green plant. My whole taste rose to my mouth. What had I done to myself? With my heart thumping, my temples pulsing, this is what I had done to myself. I had killed. I had killed, but why such delight? And besides that, a vital acceptance of that delight? For how long then had I been about to kill? No, it wasn't about that. The question was, what had I killed? That calm woman had always been. Had she gone mad with pleasure? With my eyes still closed, I was trembling with delight. To have killed was so much greater than I was. It was appropriate to that limitless room. To have killed opened the dryness of the sands of the room to dampness. Finally, as if I'd dug and dug with hard and eager fingers until I found within myself a thread of drinkable life that was a thread of death. I slowly opened my eyes with sweetness now and gratitude, shyness with the modesty of glory. From the finally damp world from which I was emerging, I opened my eyes and met the great and harsh open light. I saw the now closed door of the wardrobe, and I saw myself. And I saw half of the roach's body outside the door, sticking out erect in the air, a caryatid, but a living caryatid. I hesitated to comprehend, looking at it in surprise. I gradually realized what had happened. I hadn't slammed the door hard enough. I'd caught the cockroach, yes, which couldn't go any further, but I'd left it alive. Alive and looking at me, I quickly averted my eyes with violent revulsion. I needed, therefore, to strike again. One more strike? I wasn't looking at the roach, but I told myself I still needed to strike one more time. I repeated it slowly, as if each repetition could command the pulses of my heart, the beats that were spaced too wildly, like the soreness of a pain I couldn't feel, until finally managing to hear myself, finally managing to get myself under control. I lifted my hand high in the air as if my whole body, along with the blow of my arm, would come down against the wardrobe door. But that was when I saw the roach's face. It was sticking straight out at the height of my head and my eyes. For a second I sat there with my hand frozen in the air, then I gradually lowered it. A second earlier I might still have been able not to see the countenance on the cockroach's face. But it happened a fraction of a second too late. I was seen. My hand, which had lowered when it abandoned its determination to strike, was slowly rising back to stomach level, though I myself hadn't moved. My stomach had cringed inside my body. My mouth was terribly dry. I ran an equally dry tongue over my rough lips. It was a face without a contour. The antennae stuck out in whiskers on either side of its mouth. Its brown mouth was well drawn. The long and slender whiskers were moving slowly and dry. Its black, faceted eyes were looking. It was a cockroach as old as a fossilized fish. It was a cockroach as old as the salamanders and chimeras and griffins. I don't know that word. And leviathans. It was as ancient as a legend. I looked at its mouth. There was the real mouth. I had never seen a roach's mouth. I, in fact, had never actually seen a cockroach. I had just been repulsed by its ancient and ever-present existence, but had never really actually come face to face with one, not even in thought. And so I was discovering that, though compact, a roach is composed of layers and brown layers, fine as onion skin, as if each could be lifted by a fingernail, and still there would always be another underneath, and then another. Maybe the scales were its wings, but then it must be made of layers and layers of thin wings, pressed together to form that compact body. It was reddish brown and had cilia all over. Maybe the cilia were its multiple legs. The antennae were now still, dry and dusty strands. A cockroach doesn't have a nose. I looked at it, with that mouth and eyes. It looked like a dying mulatto woman, but its eyes were radiant and black, the eyes of a bride. Each individual eye looked like a cockroach, the fringed, dark, dustless, and living eye, and the other eye was the same. Two roaches implanted in the roach, and each eye reproduced the entire cockroach.